Welcome to the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Communications. We're not currently, we don't have a quorum, so what we're going to do is begin as a subcommittee on the Committee of Energy, Utilities, and Communications. We have an author here present, Assemblymember Ashajian. Welcome. And you'll be presenting on AB 361.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Good morning. Pleased to present Assembly Bill 361, which will extend the sunset date of the Nuclear Planning Assessment Special Account from July 1, 2019 to August of 2025. This account will be funded by 3/1000ths of a cent per kilowatt hour to continue to fund emergency planning programs for the Diablo Canyon Power Plant. Currently, the Office of Emergency Services is required to coordinate the activities relating to preparation and implementation of the State Nuclear Power Plant Emergency Response Plan. Existing law requires utilities to pay for anticipated state and local agency costs to state controller, who then places it into the special account to fund emergency planning programs. However, this requirement sunsets more than 5 years prior to Diablo Canyon current license expires. If the plant were to continue in operation without funding, emergency preparedness and response for the surroundings area will state will be jeopardized. AB 361 would ensure that these critical programs are funded to match the duration of the nuclear power plant's license. This measure is supported by SLO County, Santa Barbara County, and PG&E. I have with me today Rochelle Becker with California Alliance for Nuclear Responsibility to sponsor of the bill, who may answer questions you might have. And also, the lovely lady next to me here.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Karen Lang on behalf of the San Luis Obispo County Board of Supervisors. In addition to the work that the state does, the county does a lot of local planning in case there is an emergency event, and the funding tying it to the sunset of the permit on the actual facility makes perfect sense, and for all those reasons, the county urges your aye vote today. Thank you.
Rochelle Becker, the Alliance for Nuclear Responsibility. When we first looked into this bill, we discovered that it would sunset while the plant was still operating. Our current emergency services are well trained, both for local facilities, but as well as a nuclear power plant. If they don't have the funding and have to look elsewhere for jobs, we will not have that well-educated, well-trained workforce in place as this plant operates. It's vitally important that this bill be passed. Thank you very much.
Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Do we have any questions or comments from the committee? Move the bill. Can't move the bill yet. Okay, very well. Do you want to make any closing comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Okay, very well. Next, we'll hear from Assemblymember Williams on AB 645.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Senators. California is a leader in reducing greenhouse gases from electricity generation while maintaining an affordable and reliable electricity system. The RPS has been a resounding success and a prime example of California's work on climate change. Despite early concerns about the availability of sufficient resources, the RPS has led to the development of new solar, wind, and geothermal power plants, as well as related manufacturing and services. These investments have created thousands of new jobs, millions of dollars of new investment and tax dollars, and significant clean air and climate benefits, and has transformed even the areas of the state that traditionally have been fossil fuel development, like myself and the senator from Kern County, into energy-producing areas, not just oil-producing areas. Additionally, the cost of renewable energy has fallen since California adopted its 33% target. In fact, retail rates vary only slightly between those states leading in renewable purchases and those states that don't aggressively pursue renewables. Yet the positive momentum of this program will plateau in 2020, and most of California's utilities are unlikely to comply ahead of schedule. And all the scenarios for achieving long-term climate change goals rely on further increasing zero-carbon energy resources and replacing fossil fuel as an energy source. Significantly boosting the requirement to procure renewable energy is a key component of this strategy. This bill, AB 645, increases RPS to 50% by 2030 and advances California towards a cleaner, healthier, and more prosperous future. Supported by environmental leaders, consumer advocates, labor, and a broad range of renewable energy interests, solar, wind, geothermal, and biomass. And for this reason, I ask for your aye vote.
Very well, thank you. What I'm going to do is interrupt your presentation and establish a quorum. Clerk, please call the roll.
Hueso.
Present.
Hueso here. Fuller.
Present.
Fuller here. Canella. Hertzberg.
Here.
Hertzberg here. Hill. Lara. Leyva.
Here.
Leyva here. McGuire. Morel.
Here.
Morel here. Pavley.
Here.
Pavley here. Wolk.
We'll hear from supporters.
Mr. Chairman and members, Scott Wetch on behalf of the California Coalition of Utility Employees, the State Association of Electrical Workers, and the California State Pipe Trades Council, and the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers. As you know, Mr. Chair, we've been supporting and working very diligently with the Pro Tem on the Senate's Clean Energy Package, a stakeholder group that's been meeting on a few times a week to work on that package. The author and chair of the Assembly Natural Resources Committee has been actively involved in that process, and we believe that moving AB 645 would be very helpful to getting to the final solution here at the end of the summer with the administration and getting to where we want to go. So we are here in strong support of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Member Cesar Diaz, on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council, will associate my comments also with Mr. Wetch's and also just speak to the job creation aspects of this policy. The meticulous implementation of California's environmental policy has created not only a cleaner environment for Californians at basically almost no cost or added cost to the ratepayers, but more importantly has created tens of thousands of jobs for building trades members, oftentimes during the worst of the economic recession in the most impoverished areas, areas such as the Fresno area, Kern County, where there's not enough economic opportunity. It diversified that economy. It opened up apprenticeship programs and opportunities for people that are coming out of high school, people that are finding basic difficulties in finding employment, and the apprenticeship program is now given an opportunity to work on those renewable energy projects, but also expand those to other construction careers. I think it's very important to look at this as an investment, not only for California workers, but also in California's future, and we respectfully urge your support. Thank you.
Amber Blix for the Independent Energy Producers Association, representing large-scale independent power producers. The existing RPS has proven to be a reliable framework for meeting our state's renewable and environmental goals in a specified time frame. We think the existing RPS is a great way to continue on this success story. We like the straight extension of the RPS here as a program that is successfully working in the state today. We ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Chairman and members, Delaney Hunter on behalf of the Union of Concerned Scientists. We're in strong support of 645. One, to continue our leadership on clean energy, but also as a way to manage our climate needs.
Andrea York on behalf of the Clean Power Campaign in strong support.
Thank you. Melissa Cortez Roth on behalf of the California Wind Energy Association, here in strong support. We very much support extending the existing framework of the RPS. Wind energy is supporting California's economy with about 7,500 well-paying jobs. We've also contribute about $70 million in annual county property tax, so we want to see this continue on. Thank you.
Elizabeth Byrne on behalf of Sierra Club California in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark Fenstermaker on behalf of the Environmental Defense Fund in strong support.
Kim Shiner on behalf of the U.S. Green Building Council of California in strong support. Thank you.
Hi, Gareth Elliott. I'm here on behalf of the Solar Energy Industries Association, as well as the Energy Storage Alliance in strong support.
Alberto Tarico on behalf of Sunrun. We have a support if amended to include rooftop solar as part of any new RPS calculation. Thank you.
Margaret Gladstein on behalf of Solar City, echoing the comments by Mr. Tarico.
Tiffany Whiten representing Next Gen Climate Action and the Large Scale Solar Association. Between 2010 and 2014, there were 26,000 solar jobs created. We thank the author for bringing this forward and ask your support.
Karina Hendren on behalf of Environment California in support.
Sylvia Solis Shaw on behalf of the City of Santa Monica in support. Steve Chatham on behalf of Advanced Energy Economy, in strong support of the bill.
Kelly Dale on behalf of California League of Conservation Voters in support.
Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the Utility Reform Network. We have a supportive amended position. Look forward to continuing our conversations with the author.
Julie Malinowski-Ball on behalf of the California Biomass Energy Alliance in support.
Gilto PD with the California Municipal Utilities Association, representing the state's electric utilities. We have a supportive amended position. We deviate from a straight line approach to the RPS, are seeking amendments that include behind the meter DG to count towards bucket 1, but also for some of my members at a 50% RPS straight line, large hydro, which is carbon-free power, becomes an issue for them. We also have members with green energy programs. We'd like some accounting accommodation made to them as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Matt Kloppenstein on behalf of the Sacramento Municipal Utility District and the California Solar Energy Industry Association. Both have a support if amended position. We would like to see behind the meter DG counted. Thank you.
Mario DiBernardo with the Northern California Power Agency. I'd like to thank the author for working with us and discussing our concerns. Chief among them, we'd like to see DG get full RPS value, as well as accommodations to publicly owned utilities that may have more than 50% hydro in any given year. Thank you.
Any opposition?
Mr. Chair, members, Cindy Howe, Southern California Edison. We appreciate the work that Supplemental Williams has done and recognize that the author, his staff, and the stakeholder group that's been working has invited us to participate. And unfortunately, Southern California Edison has taken an opposed unless amended position, given that we haven't yet seen movement on our priority issues. Southern California Edison supports the state's ambitious climate goals and recognize that in order to get there in a manner that is consistent with safe, reliable, affordable service to our customers and one that other states and nations can model and achieve, we have to adopt smart policies that focus on the goal in the least cost manner to achieve it. So while Southern California supports the overall goal that AB 645 is attempting to accomplish, we oppose the way in which it sets out to achieve it. AB 645 maintains a structure, the RPS, which creates technology winners and losers and maintains inequities within the existing RPS program to the disadvantage of utility customers. The governor's directive in achieving the state's climate goals was to achieve 50% renewables, and that's what the policy should do. It should look towards renewables that are in the RPS program as well as other eligible renewable distributed generation on a going forward basis to count towards the state's renewable energy goals. If we are to achieve the state's GHG emission reduction goals, we need all of the tools in the toolbox, and we need to align state policy with utilities, and DG should count. Utility customers should also be able to benefit from the cost mitigation strategies and tools that other retail sellers can benefit from today. RPS rules should be applied equitably and equally among all retail sellers. So as the state moves towards its 2050 GHG emission reduction goals, there are a couple of imperatives. Instead of prescriptive, costly mandates, the state must begin to favor least cost options, and we have to put a premium on equitable rules. Southern California Edison believes that movement in this direction should start now. And we really want to support this policy, and we will continue working to do that. But right now, we have an opposed unless amended to address those priority issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Michael Shaw, California Manufacturers and Technology Association. We come in opposition to AB 645 and have noted it as one of our key manufacturing vote bills for the year. We have grave concerns about increasing arbitrarily the RPS from 33 to 50%. As a bit of a historical note, in the last several years, we've seen California's premium, the amount we pay above what the national average is in terms of electrical rates, rise from about 50% to over 70%. So we're, and that's just occurred in the last several years. Partially related, probably AB 32 cap and trade program, the RPS requirement that's currently in place, and a number of other policies. That differential is a disincentive for manufacturing growth in California. And as we've seen, job growth in California has significantly differed from the rest of the nation. California's manufacturing job growth has been about 2.45% over the last, since 2010, the official end of the recession. The rest of the nation is seeing about 7.63% growth in manufacturing jobs. So that's not to say that that's purely entirely related to energy prices, but it is a significant factor when manufacturers are looking to site new facilities or grow. We also have concerns about the impact that this would have on further price increases. We do not believe that raising the RPS leads to lower electrical rates, and therefore that would continue to add to that differential or that premium manufacturers are paying. In addition to that, we have concerns about grid reliability. We do know that currently overgeneration is taking place on a number of days throughout the year. The CAISO, California Independent System Operator, noted in their 2015 strategic plan. With your permission, I'd like to read a brief excerpt from their report. Absent new technologies and increased regional collaboration, being increasing the RPS, could also create risk that arises when there's more electricity than there is demand to use it, a condition known as overgeneration. Current studies show that this risk will grow quickly after 2020 with higher levels of renewable generation in the mix, even after fossil fuel power plants have reduced output as much as possible. So grid reliability, that overgeneration issue, we believe are significant concerns. And again, reliable, affordable power supply is critical to manufacturers. This, we believe is something that we need to consider and take more study on before we move forward with increasing the RPS. We do think that accounting for all renewables also opens the door for a more flexible policy that can lead to more affordable rates while still continuing to meet California's overall GHG emission standards. I would also note very briefly that GHG emissions from power generation are also accounted for in the cap and trade program. So we are effectively layering one policy on top of another when we can simply account for this through a well-designed cap and trade system as a more effective policy structure. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mitch Mitchell, representing San Diego Gas and Electric and members of the committee. We have not taken an official position on this, but we do have some concerns that we are expressing and discussing as part of the SB 350 channel. One of the things I will mention to you, though, is in San Diego, we were the first utility to achieve 33% RPS. We will be beyond 33% next year. Our residents are experiencing significant cost increase. In 2013, the cost of energy for top tier was 28 cents. Today, it's 42 cents. In just 2 years, we've seen a tremendous increase. Not all of this is attributable to the RPS, but it is one of those things that our customers are now asking more questions about. If we go to 50%, what happens to the cost of energy? I'm not going to echo what Mrs. Howell said. I think she did a fantastic job, but I will say that one of the things we're talking about is as we're making 20-year obligations for our customers, those who don't like where costs are going are revolting and they're picking new technologies to avoid paying those costs. They're leaving those who are non-participating to cover that cost. So in San Diego, that has become a tremendous concern, which is why we believe the equal treatment aspect, no matter what you do on RPS, you have to make sure that when we lose customers, the obligation we've made for them gets taken with them, because you can't leave it for those who are least able to participate in all the new technologies. This discussion about climate and the climate objectives is important. We think it's appropriate. We also think that we should not be picking winners, but we should be using all the technologies available to try and help us achieve the objectives that we believe are important, whether it's reducing NOx, clean air, everything that should be on the table. And so, again, we'll continue to work with both this author as well as the Pro Tem to try and cover off on issues on the RPS increase. But we will remind everybody that this is a situation that is being watched by everyone in our service area as we have achieved the RPS standard, and they are now paying the price.
Amy Mago on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce in opposition. One quick thing before we increase our RPS to 50%, we think we need to take a real close look at our current program, see what is working, what is not working, and evaluate where our costs are going before we increase it. Thank you.
Kent Kaus with Pacific Gas and Electric. We do not have a formal position on the bill. We would like to get to support. We can definitely get to a 50% portfolio. We just think there's better ways to get there than what's in the bill today. And it's two specific issues. It's banking. Right now, we can bank excess procurement if we have long-term contracts. We would like to have the ability to bank short-term deals. We can play the market off of itself. much like investments in anything that you may do, retirement or otherwise, you want a diverse portfolio. That's what we're asking for here. The other issue is on rooftop solar. Everyone understands that it's renewable, but we can't count it. There are issues about interstate commerce and some other issues. Those can all be addressed, much like we did in SB 2X. You can address those issues in drafting. We continue to work with the author. I think we're meeting early next week to continue the discussions. We want to get to support, but we're getting really anxious about getting these issues resolved on behalf of ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in opposition? Just generally, before I go to the commission for questions, the committee, I'm sorry, I just wanted to make some general comments. While I appreciate the comments regarding picking winners and losers, I think that's just a common practice. I mean, you can't issue a contract to bidders without picking a winner or loser. That happens every day. I think going through a process of trying to push our state to more cleaner energy, unfortunately, is going to move our state away from, using energy from people that contaminate when they produce energy. And I think that's just the whole point of this process, to clean our air, and in the process, I believe we can create jobs. And I think this is where California is moving, and California is a leader, and we need to be a stronger leader. There are other things that contribute to rising prices, and I think that wasn't mentioned. I think Mr. Mitchell did mention that not all cost is attributable to RPS, but when you look at, taking a nuclear power plant offline, and that is costing alone $1 billion to ratepayers. I don't think there's another cost that has been passed on to ratepayers that is bigger than that. We've had wildfires that are caused by power lines that could be avoided, but have also contributed to enormous costs that are passed on to ratepayers. We have unsafe working conditions that take the lives of workers that also are, unfortunately, cumulatively, costs that are passed on to ratepayers. And we could go down and talk about how we can do more to make the system more efficient, safer, and prevent higher costs. So those are all things that we're working on here in the legislature, and I appreciate that, some of those issues were brought up because they're very valid concerns. At the same time, I appreciate the author, Assembly Members Williams and Rendon, coming up with a different approach. It's not the same as SB 350. It doesn't mean it's any less worthy. It just means that it's a different way to accomplish a similar goal. I think we should continue to have this conversation and continue to invite input. I'm concerned that everybody has come in with a large wish list, and it looks like we're going to, whittle away at a good policy to satisfy a lot of very specific needs. But if that's what it takes to make something work more efficiently and better, I think we should listen to the concerns of the people in our community. And I think this is an enormous task. What moving the RPS to 50% does create some problems, and they should be sorted out, and it's not an easy task. I know you're working on it. We're working on it. Lots of members of the legislature are working on it. All of you out there, while have some concerns, I know you've been providing some counsel and some suggestions on how to make these bills better. And for that purpose, I think we should move this bill forward and allow the authors on both sides of the legislature to continue working with toward a better solution on how to accomplish this. We're going to go first to Senator Hertzberg and Senator Pavley.
There's a couple of observations I'd like to add to your thoughts, Mr. Chairman. I remember when we went to 20% renewable portfolio standards, the investor-owned utilities bellyached how that was impossible. And then, of course, like we saw her today, proudly talked about they exceeded those standards. And then I remember going to 33 1/3% standard, and it's impossible to meet that standard. And now we just heard again one of the investor-owned utilities say that we've exceeded that, although we're worried about costs. You see, by the way, when you look at around the world, there's a number of other jurisdictions around the planet that have much higher standards than 50% The Maldives, certainly different circumstances, have 100% renewable portfolio standards. We're not the leaders in these numbers. We like to talk about it, but it's just not factual. And they've figured it out. And when you ask the question, which is a larger discussion about the costs, how is it that on the one hand, you're moving people off the system because they can go to less expensive parts of generation through other abilities to get power, and then yet the other folks are paying more money. The truth of the matter is, when you do look at the numbers, the costs have gone down dramatically, number one. Number two is you do have an overgeneration, and what you're seeing, in my judgment, is, as we've talked about in this committee a number of times, is a transition where, as the chairman indicates, the idea of jobs, the idea of using electricity for transportation, Edison's talking about using it for water or for trains. You can take this overgeneration and really create real jobs and domesticate, as we've talked about, energy supply, which domesticates jobs and eliminates us from the extraordinary international volatility of situations around the world and or putting our young people in harm's way by putting them in the military. Is it hard in the near term? Sure. Should the PUC have made a different ruling with respect to the ability to pass through charges the other days, and do we need to fix that? Yeah. But these are not factors, in my judgment, Mr. Chairman, about the issues of whether this is the right direction. These are the technical challenges of industries fighting for their small piece of cheese as they want to protect their interest in the long term, which is legitimate. I have no quarrel with it. But it is indeed a smart thing to do, and I applaud your efforts in that regard. And you know, there'll be a lot of hair on this thing, and there'll be a lot of ways that we have to deal with it. Next case, figure it out. That's our job. So I'm certainly going to be in support of your measure today, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pavlik?
Yes, I too will be supporting this today. Had just one or two questions. Assemblymember Williams, I thought the testimony from Sunrun and Solar City and PG&E, all relating to rooftop solar, deserves some discussion or response, and maybe you can explain to me what is the challenge or why not.
Well, I think you know that the question is, the bucket system was set up in a way that complies with the Interstate Commerce Clause, but still incentivizes in-state generation. One of the largest questions, if you counted behind-the-meter DG, is how do you not have that blow up the whole project from the perspective of creating domestic in-state supplies. And so I think that's a policy quandary that no one has really solved yet. It's part of ongoing discussions. I think it's easier to have this discussion in the context of a comprehensive conversation when all stakeholders are ready and at the negotiating table. And there is one big, very big stakeholder that isn't in this room or at the negotiating table yet, and we need him. He's down on the first floor. And so to reach
Sutter's owner.
yes, to tackle a question as large as the value of behind the meter will necessitate the participation of the governor.
So process-wise, you anticipate yourself and Senator De Leon and probably with the administration coming up with the ultimate.
And all stakeholders included coming up with the best that we can do to provide ongoing incentives to solar without destroying the ability to make sure that we have in-state production creating in-state jobs.
Two other just comments. I thought Senator Hertzberg was right on, having gone through the energy deregulation crisis with you as Speaker, Senator Hertzberg. You had to be here to appreciate that. But creating the diversity in our energy mix, I think, has put us in a lot stronger place. We can withstand some of the volatility and not being gamed by out-of-state companies. Remember, Enron was found to be guilty of just that, and it almost brought down our economy. We had brownouts, things closed. Now we can withstand some of the mixes, and with the new technologies of battery storage and things like that, I think we're in a lot stronger place economically. So the policies are good, and kudos to the utility companies. I was part of that first vote back in the Assembly 2002 or whenever it was. Controversial then. They've met and exceeded perhaps their own expectations as they're beyond 25 and up to 33%. So I think one bright spot for them is relooking at reinventing themselves, and I welcome the discussion of them being in the mix when it comes to providing electricity for vehicles as part of that discussion. So I'm excited about your bill today, but I know there's some work to be had between now and mid-September.
There sure is. And I think it's important to indicate that in this discussion, of course, the specter of overgeneration keeps on coming up. Senators, we still have a problem of undergeneration in the summer that is much larger, where we are not producing enough renewables in the summer because we haven't built enough renewables, and we're still dependent on old natural gas power plants. And people complain about paying for solar we don't use in the spring during overgeneration. Well, we're paying for natural gas we don't use during these summer months because some of these old plants still take long ramp-up times. So we don't use it for the 11 hours that we're ramping up the plant, but we use it for the we use it for the 1 hour that we need the peak time, or the 2 hours we need the peak time. And so, members, the goal would be to integrate our whole system and create a better system overall. And we still need to meet our overgeneration or our peak load needs. That's just as much of a problem, and if you look at total megawatts, a larger problem than our overgeneration problem in the spring.
Senator Waisel, do you need a motion on the bill?
Not yet. I think we have Senator Morrell. Was it Morrell or Fuller, or both?
Morrell is first.
All right, Senator Morrell and Senator
Thank you,
Fuller.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Assemblyman. Yeah, I just have a couple of quick questions. I concern about businesses coming in and how expensive and regulations and taxes in California. And I know the Manufacturers Association say that in California, and you may have talked about this, I apologize for being late, I had another meeting, but their costs in energy are 70% above the national average. And when you look at all the manufacturing jobs being created in America right now, at one time California had the most manufacturing jobs. Right now we're only attracting 2% of those manufacturing jobs in California, those investments. And typically, the great thing about manufacturing jobs is they pay well, and typically springboarding off of that will be other jobs. Depending on the type of manufacturing, it could be 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 jobs that it'll help create another sector. So that's one of the big concerns I have is I think this may stifle us from being able to get some good manufacturers to come to California, because we're already having a challenge with that. Could you walk me through what you see?
Sure, I do. That may be an issue. I will tell you that in my entire political career, every time I run across somebody who is based here in California, whether or not they manufacture here in California, I ask them, why do you manufacture here, or why don't you manufacture here? I have never heard energy costs from a single person that I've asked that question of that wasn't coming to lobby me on energy. And I hear housing, I hear wages and benefits, and I hear regulation. I'm not hearing energy from those folks. Well, I think that for the consumers of electricity, the main question is, how large is their bill, right? I mean, that is still primary on people's minds. And we're doing pretty good on that. A lot of people like to say we have higher energy costs, and that's true. But our model has been to use less energy to accomplish the same tasks. And so our bills are actually lower than the national average because this model is working. Do I think we couldn't do it better? I do think we can do it better, and that's why hopefully the next meeting of this, you will see an energy efficiency bill that will help the utilities get a larger chunk out of this through energy efficiency. That's vital because that's the cheapest way we can comply with a 50% RPS is through larger moves into energy efficiency.
Senator Fuller?
This is a great topic, and I think there are so many questions that really deserve a thorough treatment that we could spend a lot of time here, and I do appreciate this author. So I'll start out with saying that I'm going to limit my remarks to something much shorter than that, and that might make them less profound, but we can discuss them later, perhaps. That while this bill is more preferable to me than several of the other choices, it is too soon for me to vote for this bill for 3 reasons. The first is that it isn't fleshed out, and until we get to the point where we have some better choices about grid reliability and what we're going to do with the current surplus of energy, whether we store it, whether we do something more useful with it, I think we're just not ready to move there. I've looked at the current plan with the ISO of what they're doing with what they're planning on doing with their over generation problem during the peak renewable hours. And basically, it benefits other states and makes us actually pay more in California. And so I think this author is a particularly intelligent author, and perhaps if he would put a little more effort in that for us, that this bill could be more palatable down the road. Because if we're just going to have a dumping policy, basically, to other states at those times, I think that we haven't given the ISO and policymakers enough choices. Number 2, on the accountability, well, and back to grid reliability, we all know that the grid is going to have to become interactive in order to respond more to the minute inputs along the way, especially rooftop. And none of our bills have addressed those kinds of issues either. And I think that we really need to make a start at addressing those kinds of issues so that when we say we're mandating all of this stuff, we have some capacity for implementation over that period of time that we're mandating that stuff for. And thirdly, some of the accounting features. It's very frustrating to me to continually hear figures and statistics, not from the author, but from all of us around the table, that include renewable percentages around the world when the mix of energy production is different. And we need to go back and we need to look at some of those things. And down the road, clients basically do want rooftop energy generation. They want that way more than they want large business to generate electricity or oil or anything. So at some point along the way, if we're going to be moving along with the people's will, we're going to have to figure out what those new accountings are. And large hydro, I think, also needs to be a part of it. It's a limited capacity, that's for sure, but looking at all sources of our energy so that our total grid needs and our total grid design match. And I know you would appreciate that because you're a total plan guy. I think that would be helpful. So at this point, I won't be supporting this. It is more preferable than some of the others. But I do hope when you get it more to your sense of completion, as you have indicated, that I'll get a chance to look at it again. Thank you.
Senator, I will endeavor to work by the time it gets to the floor to a place where you can support it. I will say that I do agree that there are integration needs on the grid that we need to address. That includes both the potential and opportunity of overgeneration. I don't want to just say it's a problem. It's also an opportunity, and it's one of those things that we need to. It's one of the reasons why I do think that the utilities are being very productive with their proposals, especially on electrification of our cars, the potential for dispatchable energy that can be help reduce the carbon content of our transportation fleets is really exciting, and is one way that I think will make good business sense and good environmental sense at the same time. This provision is not in this bill, but we have in the negotiations on 350 agreed to essentially carbon credits for the utilities so that they can go forward and have an incentive for that electrification.
Is that your closing statement?
That is my close, Mr. Chair.
Can we have a motion? We have a motion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Do pass to appropriations. Whistle?
Aye.
Whistle, aye. Fuller?
No.
Fuller, no. Canella? Hertzberg? Hill?
Aye.
Hill, aye. Lara? Leyva? Aye. Leyva, aye. McGuire? Morel? Morel, no. Pavley? Aye. Pavley, aye. Wolk?
Okay, we'll leave that bill on call for the absent members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.